On the topic, sorry about that. On the top, okay, on the topic that should everyone use their real names online anonymity. We have three individuals from the government bench. We have Ryan Lim from the International School of Kuala Lumpur. We have Kubaran Hansraj from Taylor's College. And we have Ms. Badun Sabri from the International Islamic University Malaysia. And on the opposition, we have Ms. Daphne Wong from Taylor's College, Ms. Hana Zawawi from the International Islamic University Malaysia, and last but not least, Mr. Hilmi Yazid from the International Islamic University Malaysia. So, just to inform everyone on how the debate will look like, essentially, this is the 3-on-3 format, also known as the Asian parliamentary format. Yeah. In Asian parliamentary format. So each speaker will be given 6 minutes to speak, and while they are speaking, members from their opposing team will be able to stand up and offer points of information, which are questions of clarification or questions of information in regards to the speech that the person speaking is giving. And they can do so between the first minute as well as the 5th minute. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to first invite the Prime Minister and the first speaker of the debate. And this person is Mr. Ryan Lim. He is 19 years old. He's currently pursuing his international, I'm sorry if I pronounced this wrong, baccalaureate, the IB program at the International School of Kuala Lumpur. And when I asked him, what is something interesting about you that you'd like your audience to know, he said, he loves horror movies but have a very big phobia of dolls. With that being said, I'd like to invite the Honourable Prime Minister to open the debate. Hear, hear.
Testing, 1, 2, 1, 2. Is this all right? Testing, 1, 2. Right, is this cool? Ladies and gentlemen, the internet hosts a vast population that engages in multiple discussions and expressions at one go. If disclosing your identity comes at the expense of your ability to access the net, anonymity should be allowed. For a random stranger in society does not have more of a right to access your identity than you do to keep it. Before I move on to my arguments in the discussion of this debate, let's talk about several groundwork in order to set up this debate. Recognizing that anonymity is part of this discussion, we would say that reasonably on the side of proposition, we can also mitigate harmful behavior such as cyberbullying and criminal activity online also. 2 ways, context specific towards the context of Malaysia. Number 1, through pre-existing portals, such as when you're in face of cyberbullying, you can easily report such as an issue towards Cyber 999 in Malaysia through an online form, email, SMS, and etc. This essentially is to say that if you're in face of a threat, especially with online behavior, it can already be mitigated in the status quo. Second, we can easily enforce laws against cyberbullying, which is currently what YB Govind Singh is working on in Malaysia as a whole, which is to enhance the Personal Data Act of 2010 with reference towards Poland or Europe or countries in the European Union, such as the Article 198 in 2011, which actively penalizes online threats as a whole. This essentially is to say that with anonymity, it is not to say that we condone bad behavior online, it is to allow for individuals the ability to express themselves and the ability to protect their identity with regards to online behavior. How side opposition is going to win this debate is if they can prove that they can strip away the right of protection of identity and they can strip away the freedom of expression of individuals and still call that okay, and if they can justify that to us in this debate, then they will win this debate. Let's talk about why online anonymity is quintessential to conducive online engagement. In 3 ways, I'll expound on this. First, we will propose to you that it allows users to talk about personal issues that they otherwise can't. And this is essentially important to the right of protection of identity. We'll post you several examples. Number one, such as a gay child who wishes to express his or her identity or consult advice from individuals on the online community when his family is homophobic. Second, it looks like individuals who have previously been traumatized, such as been put in a situation of sexual abuse or sexual harassment and wishes to talk about it and express such an identity or such a story online. This person is unable to do so without online anonymity. Thirdly, it also looks like the ability for individuals to access support groups for mental health, familial issues, and etc. What are the problems with all of these examples that I've previously talked about? There are two things to this. First, we would say that such issues have a negative connotation in society. That is to say that the moment in which individuals express themselves online, it is likely they will receive backlash from the online community. It's likely that they will be attacked. It looks like individuals such as rape sympathizers, individuals who are racist, individuals who are sexist, who disallows and undermines the ability for individuals to freely express themselves online. Hence, there is a big problem, and that is severe. Secondly, even if all of these problems are largely mitigated in a world that is liberal and a world that is progressive, we would see that individuals might still don't want to keep their identity disclosed, and the individuals might still want to keep their identity classified and not disclosed. We would say this essentially is a right of individuals that exists on offline behavior where we cannot tell our identity or our name towards people we talk on the streets. Similarly, that all of these happens in our real life, it should be extended towards our ability to access it online also. Without anonymity, we would say that users like these cannot access the online discussion, and it essentially undermines the ability for them to freely express themselves. It undermines the protection of their identity. The comparative that we'll post to you from the side of proposition is simple, is that online anonymity makes users feel safe to access the platform for personal expression, and that is quintessential to protection. But before I move on, I'll take one.
So if they're anonymous, how much impact do they make within this online discussion?
It doesn't matter how much impact they make, because otherwise they can't make an impact if they don't have an incentive to talk about it anyway. The discussion cannot be you influencing 1,000 people. The discussion has to come whether you have the ability to access the online platform first or not. And if they're disincentivized from accessing that online platform, then absolutely no influence will exist under the side of opposition anyway. B, we will tell you that this also enables conducive discussion of ideas. We'll post you several issues such as political differences, racial, gender differences. With regards to all of these issues, it's likely that such discussions that happens on an online platform may somewhat be controversial and also provoking. And because of all of those disagreements and sentiments of disagreements that happens online, it is likely that individuals will feel provoked and individuals will feel somewhat offended when in face of such a discussion. The problem with this is that the moment in which an individual is placed in such a scenario, as a result of it being controversial and being provoking, the go-to self-mechanism for individuals on an online platform is to result towards attacking the other person. This looks like attacking how they look, the religion that they associate themselves with, their identity as a whole, and this means that it skews the discussion away from one that rather talks about intellectual ideas, talks about an us versus them mentality. This essentially means that it undermines the ability for an online platform to be able to have conducive discussions, because individuals aren't going to engage with intellectual ideas, but moreover are only going to attack you on the basis of who you are as a person and how you look as a human. But we will post you the solution is that with anonymity, the focus isn't upon who you're talking to, but the focus is upon what they're actually saying. And this is much better for discussions to happen in the status quo. Lastly, let's talk about how it also much enables political dissent in a conducive and in a progressive manner. This is especially relevant and pertinent towards oppressive states such as Bahrain, or much more conservative states which actively clamps down on basic humanitarian rights. The right to political opinion in a democracy is particularly undermined in these scenarios because you just don't have the ability to voice out opinions that might be controversial, that might be against your government. Case in point, Mohammed al-Maskati in 2011 was arrested by the Bahrain government and was sequestered for a total of 8 days because he said something controversial against the government. This essentially is important because it means to say that even in the democracy that we live in, we cannot express our identity, we cannot express our opinions just because it might be disagreed upon by your government, and I think that essentially undermines the ability for states and nations to progress as a whole. We would say the comparative is with anonymity, individuals are safe to voice out political opinions, and individuals are safe to talk about anything that is relevant towards politics and shouldn't feel threatened when it comes to all of these discussions. The problem is individuals don't feel safe, and when individuals don't feel safe, you lose the ability for discussions to happen. We need to uphold such discussions. We need anonymity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ryan, for that speech. The next speaker, the leader of opposition, is Ms. Daphne Wong Kahmun. She is 18 years old. She's currently pursuing her Cambridge A-levels at Taylor's College. And when we asked her something interesting about you that you'd like the audience to know, she said, "I love carrot cake." With that being said, I invite the honorable leader of opposition to kickstart the case of opposition. Here.
Testing, is this good? Okay. When 53% of all online uncivilized conversations, comments made, and discussions held are ones that are anonymous, I don't think it fulfills the purpose in which side of government in this debate wishes to solve. Of the idea of comfort, of the idea of safety. Because with anonymity, you are also enabling a bigot to say horrible, mean things to that gay individual or the gay community online. And the very existence of this form of empowerment to a very wide amount of individuals is one that we're unwilling to stand for under the side of opposition. Before I move on to my two arguments in this debate, several levels of rebuttals to the speaker before me. So firstly, he tried to contest on this idea of the principle and the right to you having protection over your own identity. Here's a few things that we have to say to that. Number one, I think the point in which you go to a social media company or you go to a social media app, you also consent to giving parts of your identity in order to subscribe to the services in which they provide you. Which means to say that the principle of providing your identity or providing personal information is completely fine and completely agreeable because you are in turn receiving services as a whole. No, thank you. But also, another thing that they wanted to tell us was this idea of political backlash and the inability for you to speak out of comfort. So I think this is you need to come to a huge reality check of what current status quo looks like in Malaysia. It is unfair for their only example to be an autocratic state with immense amount of oppression that exists. In fact, looking at the Malaysian context currently, I think we're more than empowered compared to any other time to speak out now. The post-general elections that happened, this is when we realize that a lot of the policies such as SOSMA, such as the Printing Presses and Publication Act, the Sedition Act, have all been under review. Maybe they haven't been repealed, maybe they haven't been completely removed, but we are more than ever encouraged to speak up about differences. And in fact, the Pakatan Harapan government currently also encourages political dissent to a very large extent. To which I'm unsure as to which world the side of government is then debating in, because right now, in the status quo that we live in, we always encourage discussion and we always encourage difference and diversity. But also, looking at this idea of attacking you based on your gender identity, no thank you, we would also like to contest this. The same way you have laws and etc. to impose and to enact, we think we can do it better on a comparative. Because in a world of government, you can only rely on things like the IP addresses of anonymous accounts to hold them accountable, whereas we have the identities of individuals. It is harder for you to create a new account under another anonymous identity to attack more people, the point in which you have to put your real identity there and then have valid information that is given as well. Moving on to my arguments in this debate. No, thank you. So the first, why the immunity from consequences allows a lot of online trolls and online bullies to scapegoat responsibility for the words that are spoken online. Firstly, online anonymity has allowed and enabled bigotry, the patriarchy, and victim blaming to proliferate online itself. The fact that a majority of the hateful comments that are made are always anonymous, that severely points to the fact that the anonymity and the power behind that is granted to individuals and is very easily abused by individuals. They wanted to protect the individuals who couldn't speak up about issues, but we say that the society now accepts them. The people that we need to protect are the ones who will be hurt by the online anonymous comments that are made and the inability for you to prevent them from happening in the future. No, thank you. But also, here's the idea coming from the side of opposition. We would say the absence of online anonymity and the ties that you have to your identity act as a deterrence to for things like crime or to the extent of things like hurtful comments that might exist online. So for example, you are likely to be more afraid of online shaming, you're more likely to be afraid of potentially losing your job. That is why you're more likely to be civil in discussions. You're more likely to be more polite to the individual who you are disagreeing with. And that is the front that we will bring to you from the side of opposition. We cannot guarantee that all the problems of discrimination will suddenly disappear. But we would say that you're more likely to think again before you swear at a homosexual individual. You're more likely to think twice before attacking an individual based on their ad hominem because your identity is directly linked to it. No, thank you. We're more likely to moderate the hate that exists online, and that is already a win not only for a certain group of individuals, but every single person that accesses the net as well. Also, understanding that it is very easy to access things like online accounts because of anonymity, it is very easy for people in power to abuse things such as having fake bots and fake accounts to exist to steal online discussions. So for example, buying the example from the first speaker before me, he wanted to talk about discussions. But I think discussions are likely to be very much unfair, the point in which you can randomly create just more accounts and forward the type of belief that you believe in order to make it seem like the most important view, or to make it seem like it's crowding out all other ideas that exist within a discussion. It is harder to enforce hate speech laws when you can simply move on to the next account to attack the same person as well. Secondly, here's why attaching a face to words and causes enables and mobilizes social progression. Because they say that the people on their side of the house would care more about the matter that is spoken rather than who is speaking it. But we would say it has to be reflective of a community. You're more likely to connect to a person who, for example, maybe is homosexual if the person lives in the same area, or if the person goes to the same church, or if the person has the same kind of background that might be similar to yours. That's how relatability would bring and bridge the gap of the inability for us to connect. The inability for us to recognize that people can suffer, but they are the same as us. The ability for you to humanize, for you to place a face on the words that are being spoken is placing a touch of reality to the virtual world. And that is when you humanize the person behind the screen and you recognize that the oppression is very much real, especially when you have an identity to refer to. You're more likely to be able to empathize the point in which you know that the person behind the screen is a real life person and a person in real life facing the physical pain of oppression and the physical harms of an oppressive community itself. Most social movements, even in Malaysia, are spearheaded by the known individuals. There's a large depth of mistrust when it comes to anonymous, like revolutionary ideas. And we think that's a very reasonable reason as to why this is true. In Hong Kong, for example, the government utilized anonymous accounts in order to pretend to have protests and to get people to agree. A lot of people tried to jump onto the bandwagon and agree to it, but then they were arrested and jailed. For all the reasons and all examples of abuse, of humanizing more individuals, we're very proud to oppose.
Thank you very much, Daphne Wong. The next speaker, the Deputy Prime Minister, is Kuberan Hansraj. He is 16 years old, turning 17, and he's currently pursuing his A-levels as well at Taylor's College. And when I asked him something interesting about you that you'd like the audience to know, he said, "My dream is to become Hokage someday." You get that reference. With that being said, I invite the Deputy Prime Minister. Get here.
When the parliament is demonized, when the judiciary is violated, when free press is hunted, and when the civil society is antagonized, a tyranny is under construction. Ironically, this is from social media. An MP recently posted this. And to tell you the truth, I couldn't agree with this more because I think, regardless of what an individual's view is, the fundamental right of an individual to express themselves must supersede everything else. Because note that the side of opposition's characterization was very convenient. It's not just about giving a bigot the capacity to express themselves, it's about giving a sexual abuse victim the capacity to talk about their struggles without necessarily identifying themselves. It's about an individual who lives in a very rural community that don't share their views being able to talk about their political views in some constructive way. Panel, note that the side of opposition is the side that fight for censorship, and regardless of some instances where it may be convenient, in principle, Malaysia should never stand for such a horrible thing. There are two questions I'll answer in my speech. The first, where do we have better discussions? The second, where do we have better political dissent? And lastly, I'll give you an argument about why an individual's safety should always supersede everything else in this debate. The first question I'll answer with regards to discussions. The leader of opposition claims that bigots will now be afraid of the consequences that follow, and as a result won't express themselves. So the first response is, we think the fact that you can see that individuals may be afraid of losing their job, may be afraid of all these things, it's already an argument supporting censorship, which one, in principle, is wrong, but two, we think your personal safety should never be at threat when you express yourself online, regardless of what you say, because this is akin to an autocratic government that they themselves don't support. Secondly, in our worst case scenario where bigots are very open about their views in our world, we think it's better because we are more able to constructively discuss how we then fight against these views. Have a seat. In your world, bigots may be scared to say these things, but this literally means that we cannot engage. The reason why Donald Trump won the election is because we couldn't engage with individuals that were scared to talk about their views. Because every time they talked about it, they were shamed. People threatened them, people called them dumb, people said horrible things about their identity. I think in a world where we are able to look at people's genuine views, we are more able to constructively engage with what their thoughts are, and as a result, we have a better society that has more intellectual discussion and comes up with more constructive policies to begin with because we engage with everyone. But thirdly, we need to allow a slippery slope. Have a seat, because like I said, they're very convenient, right? Because gay people won't have support structures in their world, sexual abuse victims cannot talk about their struggles, mental health victims cannot talk about their struggles because they are afraid of revealing their identity. The question is, how do we decide what's more important? The addition of bigotry or the additional support structure for mental health victims and so on? Why do I think the support structure is more important? Two reasons. One, we think to some degree, even though we know it's minimal, you can control what you see on social media. That is to say, maybe you follow certain page, maybe you unlike certain pages. The point I'm trying to make is, you will see some bigotry, but based on your choice, you can increase the amount of support structure you see as well. And if you want more support structure catered posts, you are able to access that on social media if you wish. Have a seat. But secondly, we don't think additional perpetrators should ever be a justification to remove a victim's capacity to find a support structure. What do I mean by this? In a world that is increasingly online, and often these victims may be children that cannot talk about their struggles or cannot physically seek out support structures, where the online world is literally where they live, we need this specific online structure that doesn't require you to go anywhere, doesn't require you to pay money. It is a unique support structure that you cannot find in the world of opposition and only exists when people feel comfortable talking about themselves in an anonymous environment. But lastly, I think activism is likely to be a lot better. Why? Often, we think that when individuals are anonymous, we stereotype a certain idea. So the individuals that think immigrants should go back are a certain race, are a certain this, are a certain that. But in a world where we are anonymous, we no longer have the preconception or the stereotype that this specific person or this specific demographic is arguing for this specific view.
Why is this so important? Have a seat. Because it means that we are able to view everyone as equal and we are able to equally persuade everyone accordingly. We no longer assume what your views are and as a result are more able to constructively engage or persuade you through activism. Before I move on, yeah, sure.
So you really think that you can change the minds of racist figures only when you engage with them when they're behind the veil of anonymity and you don't know who they are?
Alright, so that's the thing. Maybe we won't change the most extreme racist figures, but there are many misguided people. There are some people that think having protectionist policies will better the economy, but they're afraid to talk about it because we shame them every time they do. Not everyone is horribly racist, that's a minority. Most people are just ignorant and unsure of how things work. And I think in that world where they feel comfortable adding their views, we're able to better inform these individuals about what's going on. And I think the additional facilitation of information is a benefit in our. The second thing, with regards to political dissent, I don't think it's fair for the leader of op to say we don't live in an autocracy. We don't live in an autocracy. As a result, this argument doesn't make sense because there's still some areas where there's a lot of crackdown. Like the Age newspaper was recently shut down. There are a lot of Malaysian royalists that threaten your safety online, and people don't feel comfortable criticizing the monarchy because they feel like their identity may be used against them. Or maybe it could be a Pakatan Harapan supporter in rural Kelantan. These are individuals that are afraid of talking about their genuine views. Even though we don't live in an autocracy, the community they live in need to crack down on dissent, and as a result, they are scared to talk about their feelings. Which leads me very nicely to the most important part of this debate, that safety of an individual is the most important thing. Individuals should be allowed to control who gets access to their information. In a case where individuals cannot be anonymous, they can no longer access social media because they're afraid that people will stalk where you work, they'll stalk your family, they'll threaten you. There's a fear of safety. It's easier to find out information about you. All these things mean every time I log on to Facebook, I feel a threat to my personal safety. It means more cyberbullying is likely to happen in their work, more harm, more threatening, more pain for individuals. At the very least, panel, we support an individual's right to feel safe online and an individual's right to express themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hans, for his speech. Next speaker is the Deputy Leader of Opposition, Ms. Hana Zawawi. She is 21 years old. She is currently pursuing a bachelor's degree in economics at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. When asked something interesting about you that you'd like the audience to know, she said, I enjoy sunsets and long walks on the beach. Give it up for Ms. Hana Zawawi.
Hi, can you hear me? There is a problem when you seek solace in the virtual space and the cyberspace, and you are then met with rude remarks of how no one cares of your opinion, or people bully you for your identity and your opinions. This is the kind of things and discourse that you essentially call for when you allow people to have no accountability because they can hide under the veil of anonymity, when they can lie about their identities and own multiple personalities online. Essentially, they hijack the system that the cyberspace is one that is safe. Anyways, I don't think that's true. There are two things I'm going to talk about in my speech. The first is how do we create a safer cyberspace, and secondly, how do we get productive discourse? Because I do not think a saturation of opinions online is a benefit, but rather oftentimes becomes unproductive and therefore leads to no change at the end of the day. But before the clarification of the alternative world that we would far better prefer, there's a few things. The first is that we would rather have a world in which you cannot hide under anonymity, where every social media account or where every online identity is attached to a real person. This means that people cannot have multiple identities online. It sort of disallow or diminishes things like, for example, the capacity to fish online or hide under different personalities. This also means that you disallow bots or artificial intelligence from owning any form of online identity. I think it's far better that way. But second thing, a few responses to the Gov case, right? The first question is whether online alternatives work. because they assume that you can have things like, for example, cyber bully laws, etc., that can essentially protect people. But I think in the specific context of Malaysia, I think the laws are insufficient right now. If they want to talk about reporting, oftentimes it's hard for you to push accountability because of this anonymity. I can say that I am hurt because there is no identity attached to the bully or the person that said that my personality or my views on gay rights is wrong. Therefore, I cannot prosecute them or I cannot hold them to accountability. That means that the current alternatives of how you want to essentially regulate the online space is not enough. Anonymity has to be revoked because at the end of the day, it is the cause of all of the wrongful things that happen online. Sit down. But the second question is, how do we protect their identity? Because they say that oftentimes people's identities are hijacked when they cannot express it in an online space. There's a few things. Number one, you can still give and find safe spaces online. This looks like, for example, forums or support groups that essentially make it a community that is supported. But in fact, it makes you more of a capacity to be brave regarding the things that you want to voice out because it's attached to your identity. It's easier to assist and help people because you are attached to a human being and real emotions. Discussions are going to be highly more respectful. Therefore, I do not think it's true the fact that people cannot express online, but rather, in fact, there are multiple ways of creating safe spaces, especially in the cyber safe space, and it's extremely important, right? But secondly, at the very least, when you speak out, you do not warrant disrespectful responses. Because in a world in which there is no anonymity, there is anonymity, people are more likely going to have rude responses to all of your opinions and your identity. It further pushes you to no longer want to speak outside because people say that it's unfair for you to want to voice out your want to voice out your opinions on say gay rights, or if I'm a Muslim, I do not want to wear my hijab. If I can get negative responses from that, I'm going to be pushed to no longer speak. In a world in which there is no anonymity and everyone has to be accountable for the things that they speak, people will be more respectful of my opinions. I think people are more likely to voice out under my rule.
And is your version of accountability is if someone who says harmful views according to what you have said as harmful now loses their job, gets threatened, and so on and so forth? Is that accountability for you?
No, my accountability is a few things. Number one, first argument, how do you create a safer cyberspace, right? Responding to the QI also. The first is that you deter bad behavior. There is a lot of shame when the things that you say are attached to your face. When there is actually things at stake. If I say rude things, I will more likely lose my job. If I say rude things, people will no longer see me as a credible human being. These are things that belong to me that is going to be at stake when I use harsh words. Because of this specifically, people are more likely to check the thing that they say as opposed to them thinking, I can get away with it because no one knows who I am, and therefore people become rude online. And that is the kinds of deterrence that we have. But secondly, the kind of accountability that I'm talking about is regulation on cyber crimes, right? When you do something bad, it's far easier to prosecute someone or essentially get people to put you to accountability or make you take on the bad things that you actually done. The point where they actually can identify who said it. You are more likely going to regulate these things when there's a face to the person that is essentially doing the harms. I think MCMC and other advocates of regulations on cybercrimes can do their job far better when you attach an identity to a certain account, right? But second, regarding productive discourse, because the only thing coming from government is that if you speak, that's a good thing because of this discourse. I don't think that's true. When you have remarks, because when you have anonymity, people oftentimes give their opinions not to essentially engage in discussion, but rather to cause anger, to make sure that you warrant a response, to get that popularity, your 5 seconds of fame. And this is what people do when there is anonymity. I think this is harmful and it makes discussions more unproductive. Because even if bigots speak up, they will never engage when they do not have to because they are under the veil of anonymity. The converse is when there is a name to it, they are more likely going to be constructive in the opinions that they want. The people that actually enter the discussions are those that actually care about the topics that they essentially want to talk about. Therefore, even if less people participate, at the very least, this course will be more productive and the outcomes are going to be one that can essentially impact and make a societal change that actually matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hannah, for that speech. Responding to Hannah, we have the government whip, Ms. Banun Sabri. She is 24 years old, pursuing an undergrad degree in law at the International Islamic University, Malaysia. And she gave me three interesting facts to share with the audience. Number one, I spend most of my free time watching true crime historical documentaries. Number two, I love traveling and I've taken many trips around Asia this year. And third, and me personally the best, I am crazy about cats. With that being said, I'd like to invite the government whip. Here.
Test, test. I think to live in a world where what you say, if it's unpopular, could cause you to lose your job, could cause you to be unpopular within a society so that society continues to shame you, sounds awfully familiar with the former government or the world in which we used to live in, or hopefully used to live in. And I don't think we want to revisit that world. I want to talk about three things in my speech. Number one, why do you have a right to protect your identity? Number two, what does accountability mean in opposition? Why is it not accountability in its best form? And why do we think any form of accountability is in fact better in government? And lastly, where do discussions happen more and why are discussions necessary? Because that is the question that the opposition does not seem to think is relevant to this debate. First issue, why do you have a right to protect your identity? The first premise of this principle is simple. It's that what you do with your life, what you do with regards to what your political opinions are, what your personal opinions are, should be something that is free unto you to choose completely. In fact, our Constitution attempts to recognize this as a constitutional right to freedom of speech. I also think that Malaysia as a whole is not is not a country that is particularly warm to censorship in the sense that we don't want to continue censoring views, even if these are harmful, pernicious views. The opposition wanted to talk about many different contexts, but they were all convenient to them. Opposition says people now, when they can hide behind mysterious identities, will use bots, will catfish, will use different forms and different alternatives to attack people. Hang on. Bots and catfishing are things that you might not be able to stop, even in your world, because this could mean that individuals who even hide behind a particular face could just use someone else's face, could just use someone else's big account. But even if that is part of this debate, we think in the worst form of cases, these are things that government is willing to trade off because the benefit is something exclusive. That benefit is that you get a particular individual who wants protection, that ability to say certain things that they otherwise would not have been able to say. And this is something that opposition has not once engaged with, because all they want to talk about are the bigots, the Islamo-fascists, the cozy-lex on Twitter, but not the individuals who want to talk about the protection of themselves in a rural country or rural situation where they want to protect their sexual identity and their sexual orientation, where they want to protect exactly their own personal identity if they're being sexually abused, and so on and so forth. All of these people are things that opposition simply does not care about because they simply think that these people are better off in a world where their faces are recognized. But that is not your choice to decide, because someone might want to protect their identity when they feel like what they're saying is too controversial for their society. If someone in Malaysia wants to actively discuss the monarchical institution and talk about things in a constructive and critical manner, they probably can't, because number one, something in the Constitution actually prevents that, but also, even if they want to find a loophole, if they put a face to that particular argument, they are in danger. You have society knowing exactly who they are. I have cousins who recently been targeted by the police because they said they didn't like the Queen. All of those things are ridiculous cultural things that actually do happen opposition side. And this is not a society where just because the PH government has come into power, we can talk about anything and everything we want. This is simply not true. No. A lot of ideas are still not accepted. So if you want to criticize religion, if you want to criticize institutions, these are things that are not as protected as you think they are, especially when you come from a family, especially when you come from a society or an institution that shames you if you speak out. In fact, you don't have those incentives to speak out otherwise. Either laws exist, society prevents you, your friends know exactly what your opinions are, and they shame you for it, they don't become friends with you anymore. All of these things
are personal choices that you should be allowed to make, and you should be allowed to weigh in as risk. And if you feel like these are risks that you do not want to take when you air out particularly harmful narratives or narratives that are controversial, then you should be allowed to protect your identity. Even in the worst case scenario, if we're talking about bigots, the problem is, Daphne, Hannah, and Em, if you don't have Kozilet and instead you have a face to that particular icon, or you have the face to that particular Twitter account, that doesn't change the fact that people will only attack his face. People will only attack this look of this meninist or this person who is anti-feminist without actually engaging with the idea that unfortunately a lot of Malaysians, or just generally Malaysians, actually opt into. That feminism is bad, that a lot of institutions are bad. So in fact, these ideas get swept aside by us because we think that this is harmful and we don't want to see it. But a lot of people need for this to be seen, number one, so that they can call it out on Twitter. In fact, for every cause that you have, you also have Shafiqa Osman. You have a lot of individuals who are willing to talk about it. But the choice is important. If Shafiqa wanted to instead remain anonymous, we think that's fine as well. I want to talk about the second issue then before we end it, right? Why is accountability in opposition particularly harmful? Because opposition says if you say certain things that are harmful, you should be brought to accountability. Number one, they never specified exactly what that harm was. What exactly are these harmful narratives? Who sets these standards? Right now it's us, but if the tables were turned, if it was someone else decided that what we were saying were harmful, would that necessarily be a good thing? But number two, the accountability in their world is you losing your job, you getting threatened. I think this is bad because even the worst human being, the point at which they get their jobs threatened, they will still not cease to believe in that particular idea. Now they paint themselves as victims of the wider witch hunt. Now they paint themselves as victims and heroes to the people who do believe in what they want to believe in. And so they will become martyrs and rallying calls to the people that share their views. So Koziak may lose his job, but he'll become a hero to some other Malay Muslim fascist who thinks that feminism is bad. We'll talk about women in a bad way still. And those kind of ideas get further underground, get pushed into a darker world and a darker web that you can't talk about. That means there's no accountability in your world. But lastly, I want to bring this debate back to where it needs to be. Anonymity is not just for people who are bigots. It's for people who need protection. It's for activists in a world where sometimes what you say is unpopular and controversial. Anonymity is not always the answer, but at times it's absolutely necessary.
Thank you very much, Banu. And to end today's debate, we have Mr. Hilmi Yazid, who's currently 22, pursuing an undergrad degree in law at the International Islamic University Malaysia. And when asked, what is something interesting about you that you'd like the audience to know? He said, I have a passion for interior design. With that being said, I invite the opposition whip. They're here.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can sum up government side in two sentences. The first, there is a right for you to speak out what you feel. And number two, they're fine if some people act in harmful and malicious ways because you have laws to protect them. I'm on the side that the Prophet Muhammad propagated, that prevention is better than cure. And I think there'll be a more preferable world when it comes to engaging within the online sphere. There are three things I want to talk about in my speech. Number one, in principle, whether or not you ought to deserve this particular right and whether or not they compare to this one, which is comparatively more harmful in opposition. Number two, I'm going to look at online discussions and in which world will you have better online discussions when it comes to things like political discourses and whether or not racial tensions are going to be exacerbated. And last, I'm going to talk about political dissent and whether or not, like government, there's a better world where you can have the ability to have dissent against a particular government. Actually, I'm going to do that first. Let's look at whether or not political dissent is better in government as well. The first thing I want to suggest is that you can be anonymous as much as you like and still be silenced by evil governments. Why is this true? Because notice what Ryan said, that in mitigating a lot of the harms of anonymity, which is things like, for example, cyberbots, things like, for example, cyberbullying, that you can track down IP addresses and pinpoint your location. That means the same evil governments that they say are going to silence you if you are not anonymous still will have the capacity to silence you even when you are anonymous. They have control over the laws of that particular country. They have the resources in order for them to track you down. So this issue about political dissent in places where you might necessarily be silenced isn't much of a issue in this particular debate, because in the best case scenario, it is symmetrical in its outcome in both sides of the house. But we actually suggested that anonymity actually is a tool for oppressive governments to become more oppressive. We suggested that it definitely speaks zero engagement. This is to suggest that oftentimes evil states or like autocratic governments can use anonymity in order for them to trick you to believe that there is a revolution happening. This happened in Hong Kong when the Hong Kong government like tried to rally a protest, but eventually it ended up being that it was the Hong Kong government that created that particular rally and then jailed down centers that joined that particular rally. This is the reality on online anonymity, where it can be used by anyone and not just people, but even states that want to silence you at the end of the day. So if the issue about political dissent is in question, it is worse in government. No, thank you. Second, let's analyze online discussions. The first is that Bannon suggested they can trade off the harms of anonymous bots and cyber troopers. Unfortunately, the modus operandi of like a lot of these anonymous bots often are doing things like, for example, political influences by spreading fake news and hate speech. This happened by like when Trump deployed cyber troopers and bots in order for them to try and influence the election, nudge individuals in order for them to believe that the Trump administration is the one that they ought to vote for, in addition to the help of the Russian alliances. This has also happened with UMNO cyber troopers, where you see oftentimes they actively engage with things, for example, inciting violence. We say that you cannot trade this off. Why? Because in the fullest extent of a lot of the things anonymous individuals do is either A, swing election votes, rig them, and try to make the structures that we have now, which are free, to become less free as a result of them nudging politics. But in addition to that, the incitement of violence oftentimes leads to more harm at the end of the day. This is not something you can trade off, because oftentimes, even in the best case scenario, if we believe that you have laws to mitigate this, oftentimes the harms are already done. So yes, you can prosecute individuals that incite violence through using cyber troopers and anonymity, but in the fullest extent, the harm of the incitement of violence by racists oftentimes already exists. We would prefer if that harm is prevented, and hence it would have been a more preferable world. Sure.
We've agreed that oppressive governments will still continue to be oppressive governments, sure. But people and society will threaten you if, for example, you're a mainland Chinese person in support of Hong Kong in mainland China and you live in mainland China. How do you get protection then to air out your grievances?
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go to that now. So number 3, in terms of the issue of safety and your ability to criticize government or your ability to speak out, the first thing I want this House to make clear of is that the argument about safety that government suggested only becomes valuable insofar as if you are not anonymous, you are not granted the same amount of safety. If I'm able to prove that it's at best similar, this is a non-issue. But I'll tell you why it's better in our world. Number 1, the way in which social media works, or the way in which the online sphere works, is that oftentimes you can choose your followers and who follows you. Your tweets can be privatized, and only a select few individuals that you want can also only access this. Oftentimes, the algorithms that operate within your social media operates in a way in which the content that you want are the only ones that you can see, and the people that you want the tweet or the information that you're trying to disseminate, only certain individuals can see this. Why is this particularly important? So, for example, right, if I'm a rape, for example, if you are a rape victim, oftentimes, even if you're not anonymous, you can still choose who are the people that you can call out for, who you can create support structures around. But we say the comparative is actually worse when you're not anonymous, because we say oftentimes the attitude of individuals towards anonymity is that they don't take it seriously, but rather are more hostile towards those who try to open up anonymously. So if you're a rape victim, or if you're a victim of sexual harassment who tries to open up to the experiences that you have experienced anonymously, you're actually more likely going to get things like, for example, hateful responses to suggest that you are only trying to get attention. You're more likely going to get responses which are more likely going to demean and devalue your experiences. We say that the emotional trauma that individuals are more likely going to experience as a result of opening up anonymously is worse as opposed to the minute small support structure that we create when you are not anonymous. We say for all of those reasons, we prefer a world where you are not anonymous, you're more accountable, and individuals are more likely safer within outside of the house.
Thank you very much, Hilmi, and that concludes today's debate. Everyone, please give them another round of applause. Right. Now, moving forward, what we're going to do is I'm going to open the audience to questions that they would want to ask the debaters at the front. So feel free to just investigate their arguments, their rebuttals, and etc. Yes, let's start the gentleman at the back there.
Right. Thank you. My name is David Saragobati. I'm 75 years old. Okay? I do not, whatever my views are, I have great respect for what you all are doing. So my views are very free and it does not intend to patronize anyone. Okay. We talk about freedom of expression. It has become a very loose cliche, not understanding what really freedom means. Inside. The expression will be you are looking for the tools of expression, and that is social media, right? But what do we define as the word freedom? And that is fundamental. I said again, I'm not trying to be patronizing, but basically, freedom is an oscillation of the pendulum between obedience and knowledge. Obedience to certain tenets moved by a good body of knowledge. Often, freedom of expression is based on ignorance and hearsay. If we take, for example, there are two issues that is untouchable. One is, with respect to our Muslim friends, you don't say anything about the Prophet Muhammad or the Holy Book, right? But how many people who are indulging in social media expression are aware of this? And they shoot and they get into trouble. And that is one of the first things anybody must understand. Now, second thing is, I don't know if this is verified news. NCMC is monitoring our WhatsApp messages. Now, are you guys aware of that? I don't know, but it came out in the Facebook. Right? If that is, I responded to that news in the Facebook. I said, it's the government spying on us. Maybe you all could check it out. And the third thing is, we are all good talkers. Particularly the Indian community is very good at it. We have talked for 61 years and we are a third-class citizen in this country. And we have not woken up from that slumberland. What I have done, I've been an ex-government servant and I run a restaurant nearby here. What I am doing now is, I've started a social movement called Turun Padang. Now, what is this social movement about? It is to bring integrity into the national life. This is totally absurd from our political leaders. We cannot depend on your and my salvation on our political leadership, whether it is Pakatan Hancho or Babaku's team. My new word for Pakatan Harapan is Pakatan Hancho. I am not a political man. Okay? but I have, over the years, expressed my views quite authentically. Okay, finally, before if you give a mic to a guy like that, I'll go out talking given my age. Forgive me. But I would say your format of debate, I coming from old school, and what I see now is quite different. Our debates were fierce, people, warriors. You know, here I find a certain monotony. Perhaps you could look into your presentation skills. Okay, I'm sorry if I've offended any one of you, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, sir, for the feedback to the debaters. I think it's constructive, and you definitely should take the points that was given by this sir right here. We are going to ask. You have an answer? You want to respond? All right. I'll pass the floor to Hans.
Hi everyone, I'm Kubir. I just have a couple of things to say to that actually. So the first thing is thank you so much for your opinion. Definitely constructively we all want to get better. But also I just want to say how much of an honor it is to debate in front of someone who's so invested in our country. As a person from the youth, I hope to one day be able to serve my country the same way that man has. So a lot of respect to you, sir. Thank you so much for everything you've done and how invested you are in this. But just to constructively about what you said, I definitely agree with everything you said about freedom. But I also do want to say that I think sometimes we're very pessimistic about the future of this country, but I don't think we should be. Because to bring up your point about MCMC, sir, I don't think they are spying on us. And actually, I've interacted a lot with MCMC. I think they're a phenomenal organization that has done a lot to ensure that the media in our country is free and to ensure that we have some capacity to voice out our dissent. And perhaps we have to do a lot more to get to where we want to be. But I definitely think organizations like these are the reason why we have a fight to begin with. And I don't think we should criticize these organizations for being phenomenal. The next thing I want to say is something a bit closer to my heart. So I take issue with the fact that you say, Indian people speak well because of race. And the reason why I take issue with that is because, no, I'm serious, I don't think it's funny. Because I think everyone speaks very well on the stage, but more importantly, if we continue to identify people, like connotate their race to certain characteristics, we will never move past stereotyping people. Regardless of whether it's positive or negative, I don't ever think that we should stereotype people regardless of whether that characteristic is a good thing or a bad thing, because there are people that are qualified regardless of their race, color, gender, and so that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for your opinion, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Hans. Very constructive, truly signifying the theme of this program. All right, we're going to leave the floor with one more question. Would anyone like to ask anything? Sure, let's ask this young gentleman over here.
Hi, I'm Adrian. I'm 13, and I feel personally that all of you spoke incredibly well. You've given great points, and I admire this event here today. But I realized that for me, inside opposition's argument, they didn't really address side government's argument about the fear of expression. They mentioned about deterrence, but for me personally, deterrence is already taken out of question. When people are robbed of the mere incentives to speak up, there will be no aggressive comments about certain opinions when people are that scared to even express themselves. Of course, this is just an opinion, and this is quite personal and subjective. So, thank you.
Would anyone like to respond to that?
All right. So the first is in terms of addressing the point about whether or not you feel safe to express opinions when you are not anonymous. The way we responded with the argument is to suggest that even when you are not anonymous, you have the autonomy to dictate or you have the autonomy to choose who sees your content. Hence, it means, for example, close representatives or friends or people that you trust. Things like, for example, you can choose who follows you and who doesn't follow you. You can privatize your tweets. and like your tweets can only be seen by your close friends, your friend list, for example, are the ways in which you can still freely express things without the fear of repercussions, knowing that you have control over who sees that particular content. So that's the first.
But in websites like Quora and websites where people can't really privatize what they say, I mean, is there a problem in that? I mean, if you can't privatize, is there going to be a problem?
All right. So for forums like Reddit, for example, the way we engage with that issue is to suggest that the harms of having anonymity in those spaces are just worse off in comparison to the benefits that you can accrue if you're anonymous. Hence, we prefer a world where you try to stop all the harms, even if it means some people won't get the benefit of the ability for them to express anonymously. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much to the young gentleman as well as Shomi for answering that. Let's make time for one more question from one of our panelists later.
Thanks, XMIDP. My name is Sin Yu. I'm a lawyer. Thank you very much for the amazing debate. Wish I was half as mature as you are when I was 16. So I have a question. I think this is probably more relevant to the government, right? Yeah, to the government. Okay, so my question is this. Anonymity is, you can't divide anonymity from freedom of speech and expression. But if offline, if in real life, you don't get I would say, privilege to be anonymous, why then should you have more rights online? So perhaps this is something that I would like to hear your opinion on.
Yeah, hi. My name is Ryan. I'll be responding to that. The first I want to say is that number one, even if I'll take you at your best that anonymity isn't present on like in offline behavior, doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't have anonymity online simply because of the amount of benefit that we're able to accrue to that. So that's first. Second, I would also want to challenge the premise of that assumption because I don't think it's true that anonymity cannot be achieved in an offline behavior. Anonymity doesn't necessarily mean you're concealing the whole of your identity towards people around you. It also means that if you meet a person on the street, you can choose not to tell him or her your name. You can choose not to disclose where you live. You can choose not to disclose what religion you uphold yourself to. And I think to a certain extent, you're able to also disclose and not disclose certain characteristics of yourself if you feel that you disclosing them comes at the expense of your own security. And given that people are able to do this in these status quo in their real life, I think it should be extended to online behavior. And that's where we kind of draw our logical reasoning of this issue.
I'll just add to that. So I think that to answer the question of why do we then deserve right to be anonymous online, because I think to a certain extent I understand what you mean. When we're engaging with people offline, we can't hide our faces when we're trying to talk to them. Aside from these other cases that we made, I think there are generally cases that we can't be anonymous offline. But I think that just speaks to how there's a lack of avenue for us to then speak about certain things that we otherwise would be more comfortable talking about. So for example, if you are in a family that's a bit more conservative and you understand that you can't be anonymous with certain opinions, you would then hide those opinions. So I think it forces people to be more silent and it forces people to hide their views and hide certain things that they think they want to share. And I think that's why we should be given a right to be anonymous online, because for many communities that are silenced or are oppressed, this is a way for them to empower themselves to speak, because otherwise they would not be empowered to do so.
Sorry, just very quickly. I know I've been saying a lot. The reason I want to answer this question is because it's actually something I thought about while like preparing for this debate. I think the sort of answer to that is the first thing is I think we have some degree of anonymity in real life. Like we don't have to, like Ryan said, we don't have to give certain bits of information. But I think more importantly, like maybe a bit philosophically, I think maybe we don't have that avenue in real life, but that isn't necessarily a good thing. I think like Panji says, like when we don't, like a lot of oppressed communities that don't have that avenue. I think if we can create a world where they have that avenue when they're anonymous, that's a good thing. Just because we don't have it right now doesn't mean we should have it. But yeah, thanks.
All right, thank you so much for that discussion. Debating really is a two-way conversation, and I take pride that that discussion has just transpired between not only the audience but also the debaters. Very lastly, we also believe in further engaging with the audience.